Really excited to talk to Kenny Florian today. How you doing, Kenny?
Good, man. How are you?
Great, great, man. Just a dreary New England day. Whereabouts are you again?
Nice, man. Those are my old stomping grounds. From Boston originally. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
How are you liking it out there?
It's been great, man. I've been loving it. I moved from Los Angeles, I guess October 2020. Hung out in South Carolina for a little bit. Me and my family were trying to figure out where we were going to move to. And it was basically between Tennessee and North Carolina. Charlotte won out.
It seems like the move to make. Everybody's heading south. I know I'm looking at moving to Nashville or something like that too.
Yeah,
So
that was the
looks
other
like
candidate. Yeah, I think the beauty of the United States, I think in a lot of ways, is that each state kind of has their own, not only own culture but own way of doing things, and you always have the ability to move. Of course, it depends on what kind of job you have, and there was nothing necessarily tying me to Los Angeles, and we were going to have a second kid, so we wanted to be a little bit closer to home and be in a place that we thought was more conducive to having a family and having a little bit more freedom, a little bit more space. And LA it seems like it's only gotten crazier. I have a lot of friends that are still there that are say it definitely hasn't gotten better. It's probably gotten worse. So it was something that I think a lot of people saw coming. And I didn't want to put myself or my family in that situation. And it was just kind of going to hell, and it was very, very apparent.
As the person on this panel who is still in LA, let me tell you, it has gotten so much worse since October 2020.
Okay.
So you made the right call.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great things about LA, man. It's beautiful, the weather, everything, but yeah, and we were in Venice, and it's a place that isn't cheap, but homelessness and crime and all that stuff just kind of was going to kind of insane levels. And walking my daughter around the neighborhood and seeing an adult poop on the sidewalk or tweak on drugs probably wasn't the best situation. Yeah.
I mean,
I was in Santa Monica last summer, and it was interesting. It wasn't how I remembered it. I'd visited once before, and it did seem like it had degraded a little. I don't think the news is being too dramatic with that. It does seem to be falling fast.
I mean, I will never forget. I had a friend of mine from St. Louis visit years ago now. And I was living in Hollywood at the time. And this is like, I'm telling you, 2 blocks away from those blocks that are just like the tent encampments.
Yeah, exactly.
And he comes in, and his first reaction after seeing that was, honestly, the organization of your homeless community is truly admirable. The way they're built out, like that's their street. You don't
Right.
You don't go on that street, and it breaks my heart, like walking by it and seeing it, and it's only gotten worse. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw a lot over the weekend, especially the LA train system, the way a lot of the trains are getting stopped and looted. I saw one train, because there were so many boxes and packages that had been like taken off and put onto the railway. It had essentially kicked it off, and now this train was driving on two rails. And my only thought is, there's literally another train coming the other way. How, like, we need to stop this train right now. Like, what is going on? Like, no train experience thinking I know what's
Right.
going on. Train can be,
Yeah.
Exactly. Of course.
but
Of course. Yeah, no, it's crazy, man. I think it's wild in that you have this beautiful place, and you have obviously this huge contrast. I mean, there's so much money in Los Angeles, in California in general, right? But there is this great contrast with a tremendous amount of poverty, and it not a problem that is easily solved, obviously, way above my capabilities anyway. But everything from certain government policies that are allowing for this to happen, but also the increasing cost of homes and rent and all these things, which at the fiat level is only getting worse now. And and of course, obviously, you have the environmental issues with drugs and family and all that stuff, which are degrading as we go. But yeah, it's a horrible situation. And at the end of the day, when I was looking at it, it's like, I'm paying all these taxes to live here and all this money to be in this place. And if it's not a safe place to be and it's not as beautiful as it once was, what am I doing here? Why am I, putting my family in harm's way? And it just seemed like it was an unnecessary thing. And, candidly, I'm glad we made the move,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've known some people that to get that same feel, I mean, they either hop over to Florida or they kind of just continue on south into Mexico, which is would be quite different. But it just makes me wonder if the United States shouldn't be just broken up into smaller countries, because we're all so different, and this central planning has been a disaster of this country, and the states don't seem to exercise. It's like they can't exercise the amount of, I guess, outside regulation that they need to change to manage their small empires.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think it's really that we're trying to central plan this whole huge country where people are very different, cities are very different, geographies, everything. It's just falling apart.
it is. I think it's hard to distinguish right now. It is. In some ways, I guess the arguments back and forth are still there, but as far as how both political parties are operating, for me, it's hard for me to distinguish who they are and what they're trying to do in some ways. And you realize that it's either that way for a reason, or they're just all compromised, and it's certainly that, or a combination of all those things. But when you look at that, you realize they're just not to be trusted, and there needs to be other ways of doing things, and you have to do anything you can within your power to create the life that you can. But expecting people who are elected to take care of things for you or to make things better, it seems like it's not possible these days anyway. I don't know, maybe it never was, but it seems like it's something that is particularly difficult now.
And it seems like, I mean, the one thing that we've been unified around as long as I can remember is crises, and they seem to be exacerbated in this country to almost unify people around the government as a solution. And so what happens is we end up using them as a crutch and leaning on them more and more, when reality is a lot of these problems, certainly the pandemic, people would have been better off if they had taken more responsibility for themselves and their bodies and their own education. I'm not saying anything too inflammatory here, I hope, but I just feel like a little more self-sovereignty among people and a little less trust would do a lot to help society.
Yeah, I hope, and this is probably, globally, you hope that this is happening, but yeah, I think, this was another one of those situations where I think it exposed the inadequacy of government and governmental policies in a lot of ways, of everything you guys have been doing, it's not working. So, and granted, not easy in some ways, but, I think a lot of things have been exposed as far as, how it's been a money grab and how a lot of these things have been, failing from the beginning.
I'll chime in on Frank. I know I stand on the other side of this spectrum. As far as I viewed myself very progressive. I was a staunch progressive for about 4 or 5 years. And for me, it was actually 2020, in particular, the way Gavin Newsom handled and continues to handle this pandemic, whatever we want to call it. And For me, it was the perfect example of you have progressive policies in place that on paper should help this state, should help its citizens, should help this community. And unfortunately, we have the wrong person in charge who, instead of helping out the citizens, turned around and gave no bid contracts to all of his big donors, who continues to maintain this emergency authority. Now we're coming up on 2 years of emergency power for Gavin Newsom. Like, as much as I want to believe, like to your point, Kenny, like, yes, I definitely fell into that trap of someone out there, some of these elected officials should be smarter than me and should at some degree be able to fix my problems. And watching Gavin Newsom absolutely shit the bed has just at least woke me up to the reality that no, in fact, these elected politicians are genuinely dumber than me. So
yeah, I think it's that, and it's corruption too. It's like, my family's from Peru, and I remember my parents always talking about all the corruption that went on in Peru, which is why they, my dad came here for medical school and for training and stuff like that. But they would kind of always point the finger at Peru and how corrupt the governments are, and South America and Latin America in general. And it was just so apparent, but it's now becoming apparent here. And, I think we're just kind of better at hiding it. And, we've come to believe that, like, hey, these politicians are legit. They're here to help. Like, they don't need to do this. They're here to help the country and all this stuff. And they're smooth talkers, and they say all the right things. So we believe them. But when you start seeing failure after failure, and, you realize, the proof is in the pudding, and you're seeing all these policies, waste away. And, you see a culture or a city or whatever start to disintegrate. It's, you start to realize that it's just not the way. There needs to be other things. There needs to be a whole reconstruction of the system in general, because it doesn't matter who you put in there and almost on what side. I think there's a few decent politicians out there. I'm not painting, this whole negative picture for everybody, but I do think that the system itself is corrupt. There are vulnerabilities everywhere, and they can all be bought. That's the problem.
You hit a great point, which is like the corruption. We did a very good job at hiding it. And I think the reason we hid it for so long is it's not just the politicians who are in on it. Like, you have the media that's in on it. You have the
right.
That, like, it's so there's so many pieces that are all involved. And I'm going to share this story and kind of like put Alex and our producer Chris a little bit on the spot. So like a few weeks ago, we were all in Nashville for company get together, all hands, everyone in Nashville working together. And one night we were sort of kicking it, and I brought up the new Adam McKay movie, Don't Look Up. And like, I don't think Alex had seen it. I think Chris, you had watched a brief bit of it, and you were like, I don't know, it wasn't that great. And like, we started watching it together, and I don't think the two of them laughed more in an hour span. And like, I don't know how long. Like, I felt so bad. Like, I was falling asleep, and we were watching in my room. I'm not going to turn this movie. Like, they're enjoying it so much, I can't turn it off. But over the weekend, someone posted something, and I posted on my Twitter as well, where Don't Look Up does a very good job of kind of showcasing the horrors of how media manipulates news on both sides of the spectrum. And you watch it happen with a story that is literally as clear as day. And I was explaining to my dad, all these people had to do is look up at the sky, and you can make the judgment for yourself. And the media played with your head enough to not do that. Someone took a screenshot of every single mainstream media outlet, like real main, like MSNBC, CNN, Fox, all of them shitting on Don't Look Up. And it posed the question of, do they really not like it? Or do they really not like the fact that this movie highlights and showcases the fact that they're the ones at fault here, that they're the ones that caused a lot of these issues?
Well, dude, look what's happening with Joe Rogan right now. Like, Joe Rogan's getting eaten up by every single person. Why? Yeah. Because more people listen and watch Joe Rogan's podcast than any of those news outlets now. And it's like, well, of course. And I don't know, man. It's just it's all coming out. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to see.
That's another really good instance of like this central planning problem, like the mainstream media, where they try to I mean, their game is like a power play. It's like a control play. They're in bed with all the other industries, and this grassroots sort of like podcasting, decentralized network of regular people, pretty much. I mean, Joe Rogan, pretty exceptionally talented in a few areas, but outside of that, I mean, his broadcasting and podcasting started from grassroots, right?
Yeah,
Just in a
absolutely.
room, just hanging out, talking. And people have come to enjoy that more. It's not only for the disaffected, it's become a real show.
100%. I think it's grown organically because I think of Rogan's authenticity, and he certainly had an audience before that. He did news radio and Fear Factor, and he was an excellent commentator with the UFC and stuff. But like, there's way more popular people than Joe Rogan, but now look, I think it's people are connecting to the authenticity. People are connecting to the fact that he's getting really interesting conversations going. And it's not always, him agreeing, and it's not always him getting people on that he connects with. And he's giving different perspectives. And it's been amazing to see how it's grown and how powerful he has become in a lot of ways. And the other thing, that's really cool is like, Joe was talking about something. He said something that was not accurate about COVID-19 or something. And people were shitting on him. And the first thing he did was go out and admit, he's like, I was wrong. He's like, sorry, I was totally wrong. Came out immediately about it and admitted it.
Yeah.
And, he's not perfect, and neither of us are, but when have we really seen that from, CNN or MSNBC or Fox or wherever, where they're like, hey, sorry, we gave you inaccurate information, or we did, to see that, I think that just makes them that much more relatable and likable. And I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, it goes a lot further with the people than like cover-ups. I mean, I think knowing there's a path to redemption, extending that path to others gives you some wiggle room to use it yourself. Because we're on here. I mean, me and Q are talking for a couple hours a day, and we say some stuff that's just plain inaccurate sometimes. Sure. And I think we're both willing to admit it. Like, someday Q is going to apologize for holding shit coins, and it's going to be glorious. It's going to be.
You just dropped him with a body shot. Yeah, that was good.
All right, you won this round. I'm not even gonna fight back. You win this round.
It happens. It
happens, man. Yeah. So where does Bitcoin fall into solving some of these problems, Kenny, in your eyes? I mean, what's the hope you see for it?
Oh man. Well, I think you're asking a real deep question. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but what I do know is that, when you have, and I'm not the first one to say this, but I think when you have at the base layer, when you have a money that is corrupt, and that is supposed to be the thing that is supposed to espouse value to the things that we do, or the things that we have, or the things that we're supposed to buy. And when you start to lose that truth or that clear signal, everything else kind of goes to shit because of that. When that signal that's supposed to signify value is degraded, or when it's being corrupted, then of course everything from there is going to get corrupted as well. Now people are going to be trying to cheat the system right back, and I think it has this cascading effect to everything, and it spreads out into anything and everything that it can, unfortunately. So with Bitcoin, of course, you have this exact amount, you have this truth, you have this, authentic system that is built on defense, that is built on not on trust, but certainty. And how many things do we have that's like that in today's world? You just don't. And it's not run by anyone. It's not controlled by anyone. It is global. It is secure. There's so many aspects about it that give it validity. And I think that, if and when a BTC standard is taken up, I think it's going to lead to a lot of positive things. There's so much as far as of what we've seen with the current system and how fiat is being manipulated that is basically creating this cancer in politics, business, culture, nationwide, citywide, statewide, and it's coming at the right time. And I think we're starting to see that transition. And I was talking about this before, but it's almost like it's a way for people to kind of enter this new realm. It's like the fiat world is happening over here, and you have this ability to kind of step into a whole different world when it comes to Bitcoin. And we're seeing that now, and it couldn't have come at a better time, which is amazing when you think about how it was developed, and how this was almost foreseen, right? It was like this process of where we're at, it was inevitable. It wasn't if it's going to happen, it was when it was going to happen. And the fact that we actually have this system that we can enter into, this new realm, if you will, it's pretty amazing.
So what do you think about when you see athletes as great as, Francis Ngannou coming out and saying, I see Bitcoin helping my people, my family in Africa. I want to be paid in Bitcoin. I mean, how exciting is that?
It's beautiful, man. And I know that Francis has had his, discussions or arguments with the UFC over his value, right? Of like what he feels he's worth. And I believe he's getting into this championship fight this weekend, on the last fight of his contract. So he's betting on himself. And I think that's kind of what Bitcoin is all about as well. It's like, you have skin in the game. You're betting that this is going to be the system that takes over. Him being from Africa and seeing how, the monetary policies in the various countries have gotten completely out of control due to corrupt politicians everywhere. He realizes that this is their one saving grace. This is not only his ability to preserve his value, but also for a way for him to kind of give back and be a part of this revolution that is happening in Africa, which I think is really beautiful. And no matter what job you have, you certainly want to get something and get some kind of number or have some kind of value that you can preserve over time. But I think for fighters especially, I mean, what's your body worth? What's your brain worth? And when you're talking about heavyweight mixed martial arts, dude, like one punch could change your life. Like you could be a little bit slower than you were yesterday just because of one shot that you took. And it's not an exaggeration to say that. I mean, I used to not believe that. Then people will be like, well, did you see that dude at the boxing gym? Like he's way slower than he used to be. He's not, You can't really understand. I'm like, well, that's boxing that you can only get hit to the head, not MMA, bro. Like you can grapple and you don't get hit as much. And you're like, nah, man, like people are learning how to punch really hard with 4-ounce gloves. And and then I started seeing it with guys that I came up with where I'm like, he sounds different. He's not the same kind of dude. And it's scary, man. Like, so again, what is that worth? Like, you can't fight forever, and it's like you have all that money in the world, but now you're eating like filet mignon smoothies because you can't chew your food or something, it's so as far as Bitcoin goes, like if I have a choice to get paid and my body is on the line, I want it to be Bitcoin too.
Yeah, I would want it to be in Francis Ngannou's case.
Bitcoin.
A lot of Bitcoin. This man deserves it. And it's not like, I think people sometimes think these fighters are just like seeing what they can get more and more. It's like, no, what's the market cap of the UFC? Like there's money to be had. There's money for these fighters. I don't know where it's going, but
sure.
Yeah, they're definitely worth a lot more in terms of the entertainment value they provide. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember, just after like my last fight, me or my opponent, we were texting after the fight. We couldn't walk for like 2-3 days. We're all fucked up. Like
Yeah, but and then it's easy for like me, as like, whether a promoter or whatever, be like, hey man, that's just the way it goes. And like, like, and that's true. Like you entered into this willingly, but at the same time, it's like, man, like you are sacrificing a lot of yourself to do it. So when you do make it to the highest level, just like football or whatever, some of the major sports that are worth billions of dollars as well, you should be able to see that money too. Like, how much money are you bringing into the equation? And, not everyone is Conor McGregor, certainly, right? But, when you're talking about being the champion in the heavyweight division and the biggest, most profitable organization in the world, yeah, they should
and
be
getting
paid.
robbed.
Yeah, they should be paid.
Yeah.
I'm going to interject if I can really quickly on something you just said, Kenny, but there's almost this like makeup in the fiat system where like when the promoter says to you, well, this is the way it is. If you don't want it, I got a stable of other fighters who are going to come up next. I used to work in Hollywood. I was complaining that I got minimum wage with a college degree in HR. You don't want it. It's fine. You see the stack of resumes,
Right.
like someone's going to come take your job if you don't want that. And I'm telling you, throw it in the comments, people. Like, what is in your industry? What is that tagline where it's like, this is the way it is. This is the way we've done it. If you don't like it, like move on. This is a definite thing within the fiat system, a fiat mindset where we just continue to circulate through. This is the way it is. We're not changing. Move on.
100%.
I think, I think like from what I saw, just like, I don't know, living and training with fighters day and night, it was just like, it was almost an attitude. They just embrace it and they just cope by saying like, oh, we're tough. This is what we do. Like we're poor. This is what we do. We take our, our welfare check. We keep fighting. And it's like, well, there's other battles to be had here. And I think like the more productive one, rather than tweeting at Dana White, is just promoting education among fighters. Like, look, this is how money works. Just, you got to be able to admit that you don't know, because most people don't. We were all miseducated. We all misunderstood what's going on with the dollar. And there's an alternative, and you can exit out of that. You can exit out of that currency and do very well for yourself in Bitcoin.
100%. And like, even further to the culture of it when you get it too. It's like, cool, well, now you're the champ now. So now, buy your 8 cars and buy the biggest house you can and, do this. And you realize, oh shit, I don't have any anymore. Now I got to do that again. And, it's like Bitcoin is saving, Bitcoin is putting that money in for the future and preserving it for the future. And I think once people really see it and see the beauty of it and, understand it, it's just, it's amazing. And even from like a fighting perspective, Bitcoin comes from the perspective of defense first in a lot of ways, right? It's like, first it is a money, it is a system that is incorruptible. Like you cannot go out there and manipulate it. And that makes people uncomfortable, which is insane. It's like, oh, okay, so that makes you uncomfortable that there's something that isn't managed by the government. You're like, well, give me a bunch of examples where the government has made a lot of great choices when it comes to policies that involve everybody. Like, like it doesn't really work that way. And it's almost like if you had a business, or for everyone who has a business out there, what happens when you detach yourself from that business and you allow like people who don't own the business to run it? Like what happens to your business? What do you think is going to happen to your business? They don't care about the business because it's not their business. So like the only person that's going to care about your things the way that you want is you. So I think that it's something that is so needed and is often misunderstood. And, I think there's crypto and there's Bitcoin, and people kind of put it into the same equation just because, again, based on what they've read in mainstream media, they think, Bitcoin is just like everything else, and it's Doge and it's whatever. And it's kind of funny.
Yeah. How do you deal with those differences in your own life? Are there people close to you that come to you with questions? You're kind of pretty public Bitcoiner.
Yeah, for sure. I've been lucky enough, and I've had the honor and pleasure of talking to, not only UFC fighters, but friends and stuff about Bitcoin. And, kind of my big wins are getting those people to come on board. And, again, people think it's like, oh, well, now you're going to make out like a bandit because you got those 10 people to like, that does not affect the price of Bitcoin, dude. Like, I could give a shit. Like I've been in Bitcoin for a while. I don't care. I want people to have, people that I care about to have the best money possible and have the best future possible. That's why I want them to learn about Bitcoin, because people don't know what the hell they're talking about. And there's just very few experts out there in the world. That's one thing. As you get older, you'll realize more and more. And as you read more and more, and you have these journalists that are talking about this or that, especially if you're, known in your field, or about a certain thing, and you're reading about something, you're like, this is so far away from the truth or from how it is. You're like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, I think getting people on board is one of the coolest things that I think I've done, and getting them to realize and having them go on their own search for that truth and to gain their own knowledge. I think the best kind of teaching is when you're able to trick someone into believing they taught themselves that. So it's like you're getting them to get them to have that intellectual curiosity about that thing that they're inquiring about. I think that is a skill in and of itself. Because I think that's when the best learning takes place, is when you kind of believe that you taught yourself that. And I think most of those things happen, I think, with a conceptual framework. When you're able to get that conceptual framework and understand the concepts, you can kind of run with it and then kind of teach yourself that. And getting some of those concepts of what Bitcoin is all about, separating money from state, or, having the ability to preserve your future, or having a money that is not that doesn't have leakage, that cannot be manipulated and corrupted, and all those things, kind of hammering that home, I think is crucial for people to understand, and knowing that, money has evolved, and this is a major, major step in that evolution.
And so for you, did you come into it for a number go up? Were you on a search? Was there a problem you were trying to solve when you found Bitcoin, or how did you get into it exactly?
I'll be completely honest with you. I definitely got into it because number go up. Like, that was the first thing. I was like, well, it just went down. All right, this is my time to kind of get into it. I'm just going to see what. And I was certainly intrigued by, the separation of money and state thing. Like, I was like, well, maybe this is a thing, but probably not a thing. But maybe I can make some money along the way. And then what happens, just like happened to me for jujitsu or mixed martial arts, you see something beautiful, you're not quite sure what it is, and then it kind of gets its hooks in there and it kind of reels you in, and then you kind of learn a little more, and you get those little explosions in your brain, and it's like, whoa, it does that. Oh, that's cool. And you get more of those and more of those and more of those. And yeah, it just, it kind of brought me down the rabbit hole, like so many Bitcoiners, and it does it kind of little by little. And then, you make these leaps and bounds in understanding, and it spreads into all aspects of your life. Again, a lot like jujitsu did. It's almost, you start to see the world differently. And yeah, I think that's pretty beautiful. Bitcoin isn't just one thing. That's the thing that I think makes it so beautiful. It's also what makes it so difficult to understand. So there is that paradox there, I think.
I wonder for you, I mean, for me, especially in jiu-jitsu, there are times, maybe just like certain weeks or even just specific practices, where I'm just kind of in awe, not necessarily discouraged, but just in awe of how much more there is that I just don't know, just about this one sport that most people have never had any interaction with. There's just, it's endlessly complicated. And I feel similarly about Bitcoin. Sometimes I'm just taken aback by, even for how long I've been doing this, just how much more, like, I'll never get to the end of it. There's never a point where it's just like, okay, I have achieved mastery of Bitcoin and money. I understand it all. I don't think that point comes for anyone.
It's a whole realm in and of itself. It's a whole new world that follows different rules. Now, there are rules, which I think which gives it a certain amount of security and certainty, but there's also that other aspect that makes it new territory, which allows for evolution. If it is too fixed, or if you over systematize something to the point where every little aspect is addressed, then you're integrating too much complexity into the system, and because of that, you almost open up those vulnerabilities. Like, you cannot possibly make it so specific, because now you allow for so many attack vectors. And it's a lot like jujitsu in so many ways. If you get too into these little nitty gritties and your mind starts to focus on all those things, you can kind of get lost in that process, where I think that, when you understand the broad concepts and you understand the idea of things and how it works, that I think is what gives it its beauty, and also what makes it so versatile, and allows it to solve many problems. You could take one concept in jiu-jitsu or in Bitcoin or whatever, and it could address so many different things. Whereas if you get caught into a system, it's limited within that framework. It can only address a certain amount of questions, if that makes sense. But when you understand the broad concept, you can answer many questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of like generalize, I guess, that in jiu-jitsu, it's like, at the end of the day, like you said, don't get lost in too many of the details. Remember, this is a fight. Like, hit and don't get hit.
Exactly.
Win.
Right.
Take the back. Don't get your back taken. What would the, I guess, broader concept in Bitcoin be in your eyes? I know for me, I see it as a savings technology. It's my property. It's my sovereign property. It's it's just my unit of account. I just accumulate more of it. That's the whole game.
Yeah, totally. I think I definitely see it in those terms. And I think that should be clear to a lot of people. I think what makes it so cool is the fact that, to your point, it's really the only property that we can own, that is truly ours, and that can't be taken away from us, that can't be bullied away from us. So from, that aspect, I think that makes it really beautiful. Someone who is, let's say, a better fighter than me, or a more dangerous guy, can't be like, Kenny, I'm taking your home, I'm taking your family, I'm taking your money, I'm doing this. Bitcoin is something that it can't be touched. It can't be taken. It can't be, unless you're foolish. But I think that's what really makes it really powerful, is it's the ultimate defense. And I think, you go all the way back to, Sun Tzu or Musashi, having the ability to not be killed, having the ability to defend yourself. And when you come from that aspect of being unkillable, or having this thing that cannot be taken away from you, it makes everything easier. If you're able to take a punch without taking any damage, fighting would be way more chill. But it's not that. We know that we can be hurt. We can't. If I go out there, I know that I can be knocked out. I know that I'm vulnerable to attack. I know that so how do I approach it from a standpoint of, all right, I need to make myself unkillable. And furthermore, I need to make sure that I don't take any damage. And if you figure that out, not an easy task in martial arts, but if you're able to figure that out, fighting gets way less scary. And I think the world gets way less scary. I was talking about this the other day. People were like, well, what has Bitcoin done for you? And I was like, I take deeper breaths because of it. and it sounds like something so silly, but like, I don't know. I'm not as stressed as even like the times where I was making way more money in my life. It was like, there was always this sense that I was in a rat race. Like there was a monkey on my back. There was man, like I'm in this grind. And now with Bitcoin, I feel like I'm so much more at ease. I'm not as stressed as I used to be. I feel way more secure. And there's been times where especially over the last couple of years, where I wasn't working, where I didn't have job security, and Bitcoin was like the one refuge or one thing that kind of kept me like, I feel I'm okay. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, I think I used to be like kind of a similar way. I felt like I was in a rat race. Like I was always like, if I wasn't being productive, quote unquote, or trying to like get ahead, I would certainly fall behind. Whereas since I've held Bitcoin for a while and been accumulating it for a little while now, I think I agree. I take deeper breaths, but I feel as if I've bought time itself.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
I mean, yesterday I think I I just like drew for like 3 hours. This serves no purpose to anyone outside of myself. You know what I
that's
mean? It was just
awesome.
something I wanted to do, but it was just like it was super
That's
fun.
awesome.
I enjoyed every minute of it, and I don't feel bad about it, and I don't feel like I wasted time. But the importance of that is like I would used to feel like it'd be guilty to like take that time for myself. But I've been doing my due diligence, stacking away my Bitcoin, and every once in a while you can spend that time and be happy. That's what the Bitcoin's for.
Dude, I think that's beautiful. I think, now if you replace that in our current system where you're already working your ass off and okay, they're saying 7%, but it's probably double that or more as far as inflation. And that you need to make at least 15% more than what you're making now just to stay afloat. And that's a horrible feeling, man, where it's like every paycheck you get, 10, 15, 20% of that is gone, not including taxes. It's like that paycheck that you're getting isn't what you're really getting. Like everything else is getting more expensive, like so it's wild out there, man. Like that's not a good place for people to be. And I think this is what causes revolutions. And the other thing that makes Bitcoin so freaking amazing is that it is a peaceful revolution. It is the ultimate revolution. It is the art of fighting without fighting. If you are trying to hit me and I'm like, Neo in the Matrix, where I'm just kind of like slipping everything that you're doing, eventually you stop trying to do it. And I just beat you without throwing a freaking punch. Like that's what brought me into jiu-jitsu. And I think this is what brought me into Bitcoin in a lot of ways. It's like you have this ultimate pristine system that is out there and people aren't seeing it yet. And it was the same thing. I got into jiu-jitsu in 97. And I remember learning it and doing it and going, dude, I'm doing magic. Like I know something that very few people in the world know and are learning. And I was like a stupid white belt or blue belt. I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had more skills than 99.999% of people on earth. And I was like, and like more than like dudes who spent their whole life doing Taekwondo or something, I was more effective as a
Oh
fighter
yeah.
than them after like a year of doing jujitsu. And I'm like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And I feel like Bitcoin's kind of in that same spot where it's like people don't even know. They don't even see it. They don't even know yet.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm really happy I'm not the only one that just like walks around and thinks like I'm in the top 99 percentile of like human beings. Like just like
But it's that same,
no one at this store can beat me
I
up.
probably
Like,
sound like such a douche when I say that, but
no,
it's
no.
true. It's like it's true. It's that thing. It's that same thing that like that gives you confidence, knowing, hey, dude, you can kill me with a bullet, all this stuff. Like, but like, I learned all different types of martial arts, all different type weapons and all that, but it gives you that peace of mind. Like I was a scared little kid. Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. That a fight scared the shit out of me. But when I started learning jiu-jitsu, it gave me more confidence. It put me more at
Mhm.
ease. And Bitcoin does that same thing. It's like you don't get to take my money. You don't get to inflate my money away. I feel good about the money that I'm preserving. And I'm actually creating value now with the stuff that I can put away. And it's a legit savings account as opposed to some joke savings account at a bank. So I think it creates that same kind of peace of mind, which is really beautiful.
There's certainly no pop-up fines or fees or calls from the head of Bitcoin. I
Right.
mean, you sleep a lot better holding. I don't. It just makes me feel like my close family is just more anti-fragile. Just more
Totally.
safe and secure, and I just have an easier time not knowing what the future is, but I'm less uncertain about what that future is. I feel like I have a clearer path, and I have yeah, just bought more time for myself. I don't know, Q,
Absolutely.
if you want to chime in how you're feeling about.
I mean, we vote with our dollar. With when we go into Bitcoin, we vote with our dollar. We take USD out of circulation in essence and put it into work in the Bitcoin network. And the more dollars we put towards that, the more resilient that network becomes. The network effect, like the game theory is, as more people get involved, you can't ignore it. I think we have come to a point already with the Bitcoin network that it's too accepted, and yet we're still so early. We're still so early, and yet you have publicly traded companies on the NASDAQ holding on their balance sheet, and it's still early. You have it considered legal tender in a country, but it's still early. You have futures contracts traded in the stock market. You have derivatives contracts now going to be traded on Coinbase. You have the first mining ETF that's going to be launched later this week, or I believe next week. But we are still so early, and we continue to vote with our dollars by putting whatever fiat you have into the Bitcoin network. That is how we vote for Bitcoin, by putting more into the Bitcoin network. That's the way
Absolutely.
I wanted to make sure I cited this quote, because when you guys were talking about the 99% thing, it reminded me of this George Carlin quote that my brother said over the weekend that is just so damn funny. But when you realize how dumb the average person is, and half of the world's population is dumber than that, you kind of take a little bit of a deep breath and realize everything's gonna be okay. My brother said that too. I was like, I love that. I love that.
I love that, but I have a feeling that those are the people who are going to understand Bitcoin before, those who test well and the very well educated, because Bitcoin has the way of finding people who need it first, and a way of, grabbing people far left and right of the bell curve. People, your average, pretty smart average guy is gonna. I always feel like those people tend to overthink it. They go too far. They end up going into the cryptos and the shit coins. They think they can outperform it, and they have a hard time reeling themselves in.
Our generation is stuck in this trap where we believe that the fiat system works because it has always worked. But the reality is, for most of us, like I am young enough to never have really seen inflation that we're seeing right now. I've never seen inflation to this level. I'm young enough to also never know what the actual gold standard was like. And there are still people alive today who remember that first transition to where the US dollar became what people and other countries were tying their fiat currency to. But again, our generation is still so young, and it was ingrained in our head. The dollar is king, the government backs the dollar, and everyone follows the dollar. That was normalized for us, and it's breaking that. And it takes, I think, time. To Kenny's point earlier, when he was talking about how, when you learn something yourself, it sticks with you because you feel obligated. Like, if this is my fact that I'm going to tell at a dinner party, I better know it better than everyone else. And you're invested in it, and you want to learn more, and you dive deeper. And before you know it, you're down that rabbit hole, and there's nothing else to think about other than Bitcoin or whatever it is that you create an obsession over.
Yeah. People, we're creatures of habit, and we aren't so welcoming to change, especially drastic change, like Bitcoin. And I think that it's going to take time. And if things were this easy to understand, everyone would be a millionaire or a billionaire, or whatever, you know what I mean? It's these are the things that are going to take time. The same way the internet, in the beginning was this, revolutionary thing. It's no one can function without the internet now, and it's going to be the same thing, 5-10 years from now, or more. It's just, it's hard for people to get out of their existing system in a lot of ways. And the same thing with to relate it back to martial arts. I remember there was always this huge debate. It's the karate guys hated all the jiu-jitsu guys, or anyone who did any kind of stand-up art were super threatened by the Gracies and a ground fighting system, because we were taught to believe the baddest dudes on the planet were the dudes who hit you with one punch and, they knock your head off your shoulders, or they kill you with a death touch or something. That's what most people thought martial arts was. And what made jiu-jitsu so cool was that time and time again, they had to prove it. They had to show their work. They had to go out and show in a real fight that they were more effective. And I think Bitcoin is getting to that stage. We're now in that, we're now that teenager, that pimply teenager that is out there, showing its growth and showing how we're evolving. And, when it truly, truly matures, and it could happen at any time, as far as market cap goes, it's going to change a lot of things. And something that solves that many problems isn't going to be easily understood. And it like you said, Shane, I think it rewards those who will go out there and do the work, who are going to investigate for themselves what it's all about, what it solves, and what it can do.
So are there worries that you have that might hinder adoption? I mean, I know I'm certainly interested to see what will happen in the coming months, as it appears the bull market is pulled back a little bit, and maybe we'll be trading sideways for a while now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am thankfully in it for the long term. So I don't care about the price myself, but what the price does is make people hesitant in a lot of ways. But I think I was way more fearful. And I think for those, allow me to pat everyone on the shoulder here who got in around 2017 or so, like that was the scariest time for me, when I was already holding Bitcoin, and now I see Bitcoin going to 3,000 something. And I'm like, oh my God, I bought at 14,000 like an idiot too. And is this going to be a thing or not? Like, what the heck's going on? But then going in and, talking to my wife and being like, I'm going to buy more, and it worked out. But like, that's when Bitcoin was most scary, in a lot of ways, because if you got into Bitcoin super early and you got it in at the cents or like $1 or whatever, it's like, you were at the right place at the right time. You did it, like cool. And maybe you saw it. I don't want to dismiss anyone who saw it and saw the potential of it, of course. But for those people who are like, oh, throw in 1,000 at 5 cents, you're like, they killed it. But like, did they really see like where it's going to be now? Like, no, but like,
I don't think a lot of those people, not to cut you off, but I think a lot of those people didn't manage to hold it this long.
Well, that's what I mean.
I'd love to look at the numbers.
I would have been a jackass. I would have sold in like 2014 or something, like.
Yeah. Even Max Kaiser, like the, really old heads, their cost basis is like $200. Like,
yeah, he was like giving it away to people, and he like gave millions of dollars away now. Like, so. Yeah.
Well, it used to be called hoarding. Like, it used to be frowned upon to keep because it was thought that you had to keep the Bitcoin circulating to make an economy. It was like a very fiat like mindset of just like, you guys need to go spend or the money's not going to work. Like,
right. So now, so it's hard to see. So now I feel like, man, it's already won, not to say like, this is where it's at. And this is, it's going to go up from here. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like, when you're seeing this kind of adoption and we're seeing this kind of institutional confidence now, and you're seeing, investors in other spaces come in and start to purchase Bitcoin, I think that's a really good sign, because they're starting to see the light. They're starting to come into it. I personally would like to see the plebs, I'd like to see the regular, Joes go out there and start to accumulate and save in Bitcoin. Of course, that's the idea of it. But I mean, this is what Bitcoin was created for, was for anyone and everyone to get in it, is for, governments and businesses and countries you don't like and people you don't like and people you do like to get into the game, because it's just a better system. And, I think it's happening now. I think, I don't know, like the more FUD that is spread, the more I think the answers are coming out. Little by little. Does that make sense? It's like the more people try to poke and prod at it, the more Bitcoin kind of like bounces right back and like, no, that's not the case. It's like this, and it comes right back and it proves itself again and again in this like this organic life form that is unkillable. And I think I don't know. I think it's proving itself every day. And we may go down again, but do we go down to nothing? Absolutely not. That time has passed. And I feel like for the time that does go down, someone who's been trying to get into the game for billions and billions are going to come in and scoop a lot of things up, and it's going to go right back up, and it's going to create this race. And I think, with other countries and governments exploring it as a currency, I think that's a huge sign. And once that happens, and once like a major player comes into the game and decides to take that up, then countries are going to have to follow. And of course, we have El Salvador leading the way, which is a huge step forward. And their success story is going to lead to so many other countries and so many other people coming into the game. And I think it's just the beginning. I think we're going to see more countries come into the game. And we're seeing Rio now. I've spent a lot of time in Rio in my life. I lived there for a long time. And seeing them now accepting Bitcoin. I mean, it's great. It's wild, man. There is no going back. It's all up from here, man. We'll have our roller coaster rides, but I'm more confident in Bitcoin more than ever, man. Are there fears out there? Not really. Is it going to go down? Yeah. Are there fears though? Like legit concerns on my end? No.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Q.
Well, I just want to touch on like when you bring up like, Brazil is now doing this. There's movement out of Mexico for certain different Bitcoin legislation. They passed like a no COVID requirements whatsoever. And I think El Salvador is that first domino that falls. Every other, especially I think Latin America, Central America is going to be the hub of this. You see one country do it. You see them have even just one success. You don't need to have a lot of success. They just need to have one win. And then all of a sudden people start to look around, people being the other governments in that region. And they say, if El Salvador can do it, why can't we? Why can't we replicate this? It's literally what's happening in this country with legalizing sports betting. Everyone in Louisiana, right. Everyone in Louisiana gets to gamble. You know who doesn't get to gamble? For a while, it was Texas. So what did everyone in Texas do? They would just drive to Louisiana, and Louisiana gets to collect those tax dollars. So then Texas passes the legislation. This domino effect, it will happen in Bitcoin, and it's going to start in Central America. I'm a big proponent. I want Iran, my homeland, to do a Bitcoin standard. I will gladly work with them in whatever capacity to make that a reality, just because the sanctions that the US government posed on them have pretty much limited any and all ability to create an actual viable living situation. Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back to who stands to benefit and who stands to lose the most. We talk about this a lot on this show, Alex, of the big reason why Bitcoin doesn't get the mainstream push in the media, why you will never hear anyone from the Fed say, yes, we should start allocating some of your portfolio in Bitcoin, is they stand the most to lose if we go off of a fiat standard. So we also have to be thinking about who is spreading that FUD. Every single time you have a congressperson or a politician pass whatever FUD, even if we counter that response, the mainstream media is going to pick up that FUD story 10 times better than all of our sort of grassroots outlets can ever do. But it's on us to, again, do that work, take the time to really learn, educate ourselves, and educate those that we love and care about, because they're going to listen to us first. And if we start to convince them, you convince 3 people, they convince 3 more people, and the domino effect continues. I did just describe a Ponzi scheme, but minor.
Yeah. I think we've learned a lot from the institutional confidence of this year. I think without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. We'd be at a couple $1,000s per Bitcoin, as opposed to, $42,000 per Bitcoin, which does make a difference. I mean, I like to say that you should think of Bitcoin on Bitcoin's terms, but in terms of its indestructibility and just broader adoption, I think, the micro strategies, the SpaceX's and, Tesla and all these companies that are buying it up is it's a net positive, and it really does a lot to calm people's nerves and allow them to make their own balance sheet just convert that to Bitcoin and just be done with it and hold through the apparent volatility when you look through the fiat lens. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Like you said, Kenny, like Bitcoin's also, it's money for friends and enemies. There's nothing, there's no reason to go after Bukele for who he is. He did at least one thing right in this space, and that is he gave people Bitcoin and certainly spread adoption. Whether or not all of the Salvadorians will become like true hardened Bitcoiners, like, well, probably not, but they're more than welcome to, and now they have the educational resources and the infrastructure to be closer than a lot of other nations. So I think it's a net positive.
Yeah, and Alex, I think it's important for someone to take that first step, even if that's not the game-changing thing. I think what it does is inspires other people, to have the balls and go out and try it too, and I think it's going to have that effect, and it's already having that effect where people are like, Bukele tried that in El Salvador. Well, what does that mean? What would that do for us? And even just getting that conversation going and having other countries inquire about it and, reach out to other leaders, which, they do all the time, and saying, well, how is this going to help you guys? How could this help us? Especially for a lot of those countries that are pegged to the dollar in Latin America and who have seen, a devastation in their economy and amongst their people over the last, several decades. I think it's something that a lot of countries in Latin America and elsewhere are going to look into. Africa, Europe, Turkey right now. I mean, obviously, they don't want that to happen. They want to keep the fake game going. But again, game theory is going to take a hold of them, and they're gonna see it's like either like devastation or prosperity. Like at a certain point, they have to really look out the window and see what's happening.
And so what is your sorry, Q, what is your strategy? I mean, throughout this, I mean, if we go back to, like, do you prepare yourself psychologically for the highs as well as the lows, or do you just turn a blind eye to the price completely and buy no matter what? Or are you done accumulating? What do you what do you recommend people do?
I continue to accumulate. I do believe in it. And I just buy, regularly. And I feel like it's still early. Like I've been saying, I don't have any major plans on what I'm going to do as far as like selling. My goal hopefully is to, have that available for when I retire. And there's, most of it I can't touch anyway, so it's all pretty much protected for my future anyway, or for my family anyway. So I don't have any immediate plans besides really saving it long term. So yeah, I mean, I'm it's I have pretty much allocated my future into it, almost all of it. So I'm all in with it. So I'm not really concerned with anything short term. And what does long term mean? Like, I don't know. I think if things start to get interesting a decade from now, like 10 years from now.
I think we'll be looking at a completely different world 10 years from now.
Yeah. And I also think people are, like already now certain institutions are allowing you to borrow against it. What's that going to look like in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, like, and I don't know. I think it's going to be a property. It's going to be an asset that I think really is limitless. Once people realize that, when they compare it to the other assets that they have, whether it's, gold or real estate or the stock market, I think Bitcoin's definitely going to be the real winner in the future.
What is your price prediction 10 years from now? I'm going to throw you on the spot.
10 years from now?
2032. 2032.
2032. My goodness.
And I'll make it easy for you. You can put it in dollar terms.
Okay.
The dollar won't exist then, Q. No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I said that. That's why I said that.
Man, I don't see any reason why we can't be at $2 million easily. I think more, candidly, I think way more, but I think $2 million is safe, to be honest. Like at $2 million of Bitcoin, easy. I think within 5 years, but I don't know, 10 years, man, $10 million of Bitcoin. Why not? I think, I think when you're taking into consideration just like the bond market alone, I mean, that if you take a small percentage of that and you put it into Bitcoin, that's already like $2 million of Bitcoin. If you're like, what are people doing with bonds right now? Like, what are you even doing? And then, you think about those people who, you can't buy, $5,000 in real estate. You can't buy part of a home, you can't buy part of a house, and you get these people that slowly accumulate it. And again, this isn't a national thing. These aren't just like people in like a certain part of the country. This is a global thing. And, our currency's working out for governments out there and countries out there, or are we finding that, the jig is kind of up with a lot of these countries? Like, currencies are failing left and right, and the inflation is a real thing. People are revolting, and I don't know if they can get it done with physical force, but they can get it done with an energetic force, with a monetary type of force, a monetary energy, and Bitcoin is that answer. Bitcoin is that winnable fight for a lot of people. And I think when people realize that they can hold assets and they could save for their future in a real way that won't be touched by others who don't deserve it, who have no place, having a percentage of it or taking from it, it's going to go up, and it's going to go up by a lot. Countries, major businesses are going to be holding Bitcoin, and it's when people are going to say, "Oh, how did we not see it?" Just like everything else, whether it's the internet or any kind of new technology, people always hit themselves in the head and go, "Why didn't I see it? How it was so obvious." But this is why the people who are doing the work and who are willing to put their neck in the line and have skin in the game are the ones that reap the rewards, and others don't. They get in too late. But I still think it's early. And in 10 years, it will be a completely different conversation, and it will certainly be in the millions of dollars.
I always hesitate to ask this question, but I'm still interested, but it kind of dawns on me that this will look back like asking someone, do you think your job will use the internet in the future? But do you see yourself working within the Bitcoin community, which is still pretty niche, I would say?
Yeah.
The tight community is like pretty niche, no matter how you define it. But rapidly expanding and growing. Do you see yourself getting paid outright in Bitcoin in the future, or taking on any sort of like pure play Bitcoin projects, or is it just, a unit of account and a savings for you and that's it? Or
I would love that. And I definitely foresee that. I have, accounts set up for people in my family. And, the goal is, let's say for my kids, once they reach a certain age, for them to have the decision to say, hey, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my Bitcoin, or this is what I'm going to do with my money. And I see that for myself as well. It's like, I don't know, now that, it's reached a certain point or a certain value, now it's time to go out and have that value create more value, and have, businesses created and other entities created. And I think that's what it's supposed to do. That's what, preserving value and saving is supposed to do. It's like, all right, now do something with it. Put some good out in the world, make some, something that's going to be beneficial for people. And, and of course, my family, candidly, I'm thinking about them first, but, there's so many other things that you can do, and money creates money. And I think when Bitcoin is able to grow to a certain level, I think you're going to see it turn into a lot of different things and a lot of businesses that I'm sure aren't able to really fathom at this point. But I think the space is going to change so much, and I think whether it's creating other businesses and creating other ways for working with other Bitcoiners or whatever it is, I would love to be a part of that. And yeah, I think that it's still so early, and I think there's so many different uses for it that we're not even aware of right now.
Heartily agree with you. Yeah, exciting stuff. Are there any last remarks on Bitcoin for you today, Kenny? Anything, any burning questions or thoughts about the near future?
I guess just immediately I would say that, first of all, thank you to you guys and anyone in the space who has been educating people about it. I think there are some phenomenal resources out there for people. It's what allowed me to have that kind of conviction and to be able to get into the space and find some success there. And I don't know, be inquisitive and have that curiosity and look into it and do your research and figure out why people are talking about Bitcoin the way that they're talking about it. There's a tremendous amount of information, whether it's Bitcoin Twitter or all the amount of research that's been done, and in a variety of ways, whether you're talking about the philosophy of Bitcoin, the technicals of Bitcoin, Bitcoin as a network and getting to the nitty gritty there, and game theory, all the different things that are related to Bitcoin. There's so much to it. So I would just encourage people to go out there and learn as much as possible. I've been so grateful to the Bitcoin community for all the info that I've gotten over the years, and yeah, never lose that intellectual curiosity. And that's pretty much it. And it's still early, man. It's still early. So plenty of time to save and, look what's going on around you, with inflation and confusion and, all the chaos that's going out there. There is a way out. And I believe it to be Bitcoin.
Absolutely. On that note, thanks so much for coming, Kenny. I'd love to have you on again. Sometime. It's always great talking to you about MMA, jiu-jitsu, Bitcoin. I think our audience is going to love that one as well. So I appreciate it.
Likewise, dude. Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Q. Nice to meet you, Q.
Awesome meeting you, Kenny. Thanks for joining us, man.